General Kellogg, former national security advisor to former Vice President Pence. He's also co-chair of America First Policy Institute Center for American Security and a Fox News contributor. Thank you so much for joining us here. What are we to make of the relationship now between Russia and China, this new agreement that they signed? Is that anything that we should truly be worried about?
Yeah, thank you, Jason, for having me this morning. Look, the agreement itself, I would say no. This is kind of like normal procedure. This is the way it kind of goes forward with those two nations working side by side with two authoritarian leaders. Here's the real issue. What this issue shows is a complete lack of respect for the President of the United States and the United States of America. They're trolling the President of the United States. That's what this thing should concern everybody about. Look, presidents set patterns of decision making and how they're going to react to crisis situations. President Biden has shown that what he did with Afghanistan when he was with the previous administration, what they did with Crimea, going back to what he did when he recommended we don't even go after Osama bin Laden when he was in the Situation Room with President Obama. Look, he set a pattern of indecision or no decision at all, and they're going to exploit that. And this is one way for them to do it. They're kind of trolling the United States. That should be the biggest concern, not a defense agreement going forward, because that happens all of the time. What should concern Americans is, does this president and does this administration and do his national security advisors have the will if something happens in the Far East, especially when it comes to Taiwan, with China pushing really hard on Taiwan? Are we going to do anything, or we're just going to say, okay, well, that's going to happen, and there's nothing we can do about it? Jason, that's my biggest concern.
Well, it should be a concern. We don't even protect our own borders, let alone do they have the confidence that we're going to protect the Taiwanese borders? This idea that we were flying bombers near their border as a pretext for this agreement, I mean, that's commonplace as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. We've done that. We did it all the time. But here's the difference. When President Trump was in his position out there, he would make it very clear to the Defense Department not to do any provocative maneuvers that would cause some type of reaction, either with the North Koreans or the Chinese. There was no reason to do it. So when you fly the bombers that close, and I think they got within 14 nautical miles of the Soviet border and the Chinese border, that was kind of like, okay, let's not go there. There's no reason to have provocation, especially when you're trying to make sure that there's some stability in that part of the world. So there's really no reason to do it. But it happens all of the time. They do provocative maneuvers. We do provocative maneuvers. So that's the reason I didn't get too excited about it. I said, yeah, okay, they've signed an agreement. It really doesn't mean very much. It's going to make a lot of news, but nothing more than that.
So President Xi Jinping was recently quoted as saying that he is not trying to dominate in Southeast Asia. That's sort of laughable, isn't it, at this point?
Yeah, I mean, it's beyond laughable. Look, this is the same guy in the Rose Garden in 2015, President Xi told President Obama and the world that he would not militarize the South China Sea, the Spratly Islands. Within a year, he had militarized the entire South China Sea, building fortifications out there. Of course, he's expansionist. Of course, that's what he's trying to do. The South China Sea is important to the United States because of all the sea lanes of commerce that go through there. And he's just expanding his geographical reach. So he's done it there. He's watching what happens with the rest of the world. Then he's going to push on Taiwan. He is a very authoritarian leader. He's got a plan that goes long range, not 2 years or 4 years, but 10, 15, 20 years. Look, he's going to be elected, and I use that word with a little bit of caution, for his third term. Nobody's ever been given a third term of his Chinese leader. He's going to get that because he's an expansionist leader, and we should be aware of that. And the first place he's going to expand to is Taiwan after this.
Yeah, I think the Olympics is going to be an interesting inflection point. But you're right, the Spratly Islands, the Danger Islands. All right. The U.S. and other world leaders meeting in Vienna tomorrow to resume talks with Iran on restoring the 2015 nuclear deal. But some critics have low expectations, particularly after a UN atomic watchdog was denied access to a plant that makes equipment for Tehran's nuclear program. We're back with Lieutenant General Kellogg. General, thank you for joining us. You know, some things matter and some things matter a whole lot. Iran with nuclear weapons matters a lot. This idea that we would re-enter this agreement with Iran, what's your take on that?
Yeah, it's not going to happen, and the Iranians know that, and we should know that as well. Look, they're heading towards a breakout, Jason. I think it's a matter within a year they're going to have a breakout. When this plan was first put in place, and remember, it wasn't a treaty, it was a plan, it was going to expire in 2025 anyway. And that's the reason why President Trump pushed so hard to renegotiate the deal to make it a permanent deal, because if you got to 2025, the chance of a breakup was very high. But they're heading there right now. When you just made a comment a minute ago, and that was a comment that Director General Grossi from the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, made, that they're heading towards a breakout. He knows they are. They're not allowing anybody to inspect their facilities, primarily at Fordo, which is really kind of where they're developing the capability to develop a nuclear weapon. And when we talk about a breakout, that's the ability to develop a nuclear weapon in a certain amount of time out there. And they're enriching uranium well beyond what we had in 2015, which was 4 or 5%. They're at 60% enrichment of uranium. You get to 90%, you're at a weapons grade enrichment. And that's where they're heading to. So they're just going to keep talking, keep pushing it a little bit. And we're going to find that within about a year, there's a breakout and there's nothing we're going to do about it. Now you've got a destabilized Middle East with nuclear weapons. That's what President Trump was so concerned about. And the same team that's sitting there is the same team that Obama had when they originally set up the deal, with Malley working it. And remember, two of the parties that are working this deal are the Russians and the Chinese. They're no friends of ours. So I think this is just there's a lot of talk. It's not going to go anywhere, and we're heading towards breakout.
Well, the Israelis are friends of ours. Look at this from this quote from a senior Israeli official. Israel's very concerned that the U.S. is setting the stage for what they call a less for less agreement. Such an agreement would be just devastating to the United States. He goes on there saying detrimental and would only benefit the Iranian regime. It would be an enormous gift to Iran's new radical and IRGC affiliated regime. Who else is going to push back on this other than the U.S. and Israelis?
Well, no one out there is going to do it at all. Not anybody going to be doing the negotiations. And look, people need to remember that Iran is considered a state sponsor of terrorism. That was from our Department of State. They're only one of 4 countries that were designated. When Prime Minister Bennett was here from Israel, when talked to Trump, Freudian slip there, when he was talking to President Biden, I'm sure that issue came up on what were they going to do about the breakout of Iran. And again, it was just like they're whistling past the graveyard, because the Israelis cannot do it without United States support on pushing back on Iran. And when Iran gets a nuclear weapon based on their missile capability, which is enormous, they've got the largest missile force in the Middle East. You're just marking time till they have a nuclear weapon and a deliverable nuclear weapon in the Middle East, which just causes tremendous destabilization. And my concern is that it's almost like nobody really cares about it. We cared about it. President Trump cared about it. And that's the reason we pushed so hard to renegotiate the deal.
So, General, real quick on Russia, they seem to be amassing some troops there on the border with Ukraine. How imminent is that threat on taking over either part of Ukraine or all of Ukraine?
Great question, because it's part or all. They're not positioned with troops to task there to take all of Ukraine. They're just not. Look, it took 400,000 troops to take Czechoslovakia in '68, but it only took about 70 to 80,000 if they wanted to take like Crimea, or when they went into Georgia in 2008. They've got enough troops there to take the Donbass region if they want to take it, but they're not going to invade Ukraine proper. And I think they're just rattling swords right now. They're just trying to see what our reaction is going to be. And really, to me, Jason, my concern is this is a European issue, and I don't know why the Europeans are not pushing back more. Ukraine's not a NATO country, and so an attack on one does not mean attack that we're going to support any type of response against Russia. But they're testing us, and they're continuing to push us. Putin knows that. They've been in conversations with presidents and Putin, and he knows exactly what he's doing.
Well, and they have experience with Joe Biden, and Joe Biden doesn't push back very often. So you can see their attitude and approach to that, let alone talk about the pipeline and everything else we've already handed these people. We lost our leverage. All right, Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg, thank you so much for joining us on Sunday Morning.